Hi, this is Mike Schmitz, and welcome to another edition of Screencasts Online. In this week's episode, we're diving deeper into Alfred workflows. In the previous episode, we covered the basic building blocks of Alfred workflows and showed you how you could combine them to create powerful workflows that fit the way that you work. In this episode, we're going to get more technical and show you several specific examples of powerful Alfred scripts that you can build and use to be more productive on your Mac. We'll cover some basic scripting examples and show you variable and sequential scripts to trigger different variations of your Alfred workflow. We'll also show you some advanced examples of Alfred workflows that you can install right from the web to make Alfred do some pretty incredible things, like give you the 4-day weather forecast, or even replace full application functionality. If you want additional Alfred workflows, check out episode 458 where we covered 9 killer Alfred workflows. A few of the workflows that we'll show you in this episode are similar to the workflows from that episode since I personally use these all the time, but plenty of them are new and we're going to dive deep into how they are actually constructed so that you can not only use them but understand how they work. And this will be critical if you really want to create your own Alfred workflows. So let's get started.